Hello YouTube, this is Froogle back in the Black Shark. Now, the reason for this video, I thought I'd do another tutorial video, kind of back to basics thing. I'm in an online squadron called the Warhawks, that's war-hawks.net if you're interested in joining. And we fly pretty much all the DCS aircraft, including the Black Shark, although not many people other than myself actually fly the Shark because it's so tricky and unforgiving. And I was coaching a new guy recently on how to fly the Black Shark, and he was crashing over and over and over trying to bring it to a hover. So I thought, I was messing around yesterday on my own, and I thought it would kind of be neat to do a back to basics video on standard maneuvers with this aircraft. So that's what this is all about. If you've just got the Black Shark or had it a while and aren't too confident with it, this video is going to show you some things you might want to practice. Now we covered autopilot in a previous video, so I'm not really going to talk about autopilot here. I'm just going to talk about standard maneuvers. I will point out though, in DCS world at least, there is a slight bug as far as I can tell, which is this down here. Let me zoom in on that. That's the slip indicator. That doesn't seem to work very well. Certain maneuvers I was pulling off yesterday should have had that ball pinned to either side, and it really doesn't pin, so you can't really rely on the slip indicator too much. But anyway, back to flying.
Lower gear.
What I typically do when I get a new aircraft in FSX is I will perform the same sorts of things that I did in my first few actual flying lessons in the real world. So I would take off, manage takeoffs properly, do a few touch and goes. I would then try to do level turns, climbing turns, descending turns, steep turns, stalls, and all that good stuff. The same thing actually applies in combat aircraft, and especially in the Black Shark. So I'm going to show you some basic stuff first. Let me climb this up to about 100 meters. There we go, 100 meters. Now, the thing... Let's start at really basics. The first thing we're going to do then is what's called a coordinated turn. Now, in a normal aircraft, a coordinated turn is where you bank the aircraft, and when you bank the aircraft, the nose will actually want to go the opposite direction to the bank of the aircraft itself. So you tend to feed in rudder that coordinates it. If you're in a real aircraft, it stops you getting flung to one side of the aircraft. Same thing kind of applies in the Black Shark, with a slight twist, or any helicopter with a slight twist. If you bank a helicopter, you lose lift. So what will happen, let me just climb this up to about 200 here, so I've got some height to do this. Get up to some speed to about 200 kph on the speed, climbing up to about 200. Now my altitude is going to vary quite a lot because it's on radar altitude and I'm flying over undulating terrain. Bear that in mind. Okay, so if I just bank the aircraft, all I'm going to do is just tip the aircraft to the side. Watch the vertical velocity indicator, which is that. So if I bank this to one side, look, oops, center my controls, there we go. Banking it over, see that? I'm losing lift now, down goes the aircraft fairly rapidly. It's quite disconcerting. Not the way to turn. You bank a helicopter by not only banking it, but also using the tail rotor, or in the case of the Black Shark, the anti-torque pedals. So what you do is you bank it over no more than 30 degrees and then start feeding in rudder anti-torque in the direction of the turn. So I've got it banked to 30 degrees, I'm holding it at 30, I'm not letting it increase on its bank, and I have left rudder fed in. And what's happening is we're turning. That's a coordinated turn. It's very simple. To roll out, keep the rudder pinned to the left hand side, not pinned but pushed left, roll level, and then ease up on the rudder pedals. And you should come out of it very nicely. None of this yawing around, none of the nose doing all this kind of stuff. If it's a coordinated turn, you should be able to come out of the turn fairly stable. Now the key to practice, and it's worth practicing, it sounds terribly boring, but it's worth practicing. Try to master a level turn. Now as I said, my radar altimeter is running right now, so my altimeter is varying anyway, even though I'm not climbing or descending. So use the vertical speed indicator here to see if you're climbing or descending rather than the altimeter. Try to master doing a coordinated turn left or right without climbing or descending. So the way you do it, bank it over, then feed in the rudder. Now you're starting to lose altitude, starting to descend, so feed in some collective. As the collective springs up, drop it down and just play with that collective. The key is not to let the bank go too far. If you let the bank go too far or the speed drop, what happens is this. Oh, that's a slip. Now at that point, look at that rate of descent there, isn't that crazy? That's where most people die. If you bank too much, you let the bank get away from you, or the speed slow down too much, you will simply fall out of the sky. The aircraft will start slipping sideways down to the ground, so don't do that. Just try to master doing coordinated turns, holding the same altitude, not really gaining speed, not really gaining height, Just hold it 30 degrees, left rudder in there. Try to hold a fairly constant altitude. Then we're going to turn back towards the runway. When I get there, as before, whoops, descending, so a bit more collective. As before, I'm going to roll to the right with the cyclic, and as I level off, roll to the right with my pedals. And there we go. Not so much porpoising left and right. So that's a coordinated turn. The other thing obviously you can do in a helicopter like the Black Shark is what's called a yaw turn. That's where you're not banking at all. You're just using the rudder pedals or the anti-torque pedals or whatever you want to call them to turn the nose, to yaw the nose. So I'm just going to slow down a little bit. You can only do this really under 100 kph. So I'm going to slow down. Now incidentally, there are limits on what you can do in terms of maneuver. So I'm slowing down. I have the nose pitched up at 10 degrees. You don't want to pitch up more than 30 degrees to slow down. If you pitch up more than 30 degrees, you risk getting in a vortex ring, and I will show you that, maybe show you that a little bit later in this video. They are deadly. #1 source of deaths in the Black Shark is not actually enemy SAMs, it's vortex rings. And if I get a chance later on, I'll show you how to recover them. Okay, so here we are under 100. This is a yaw turn. All I'm going to do is feed in left rudder. See the nose yawing. Now the aircraft will start to bank. So I'm putting in right cyclic now. And again. And again. Quite a lot of right cyclic at this point to prevent the bank. And what I'm doing is turning around a point. See this? Just by using the rudder pedals. You can only do that less than 100. The slower you are, the more effective it is. So that's your turn. Try practicing that, and the same as before, try practicing that without picking up speed and without gaining or losing too much height. Your turns. So we got coordinated turns, your turns. Now, let me get this trimmed for flight. Next thing people want to know how to do is how to climb and how to descend, or how to dive. So I'm going to get some speed here. So I'm increasing my collective now, just so I don't really lose too much height. You can see my VSI is pointing down. Not good. So I'm going to get this up to about 200 kph, like so. There we are. So it's nicely trimmed now. I'm going to drop my collective so I'm not climbing or descending. Just going to level off a little bit. Climbing. There's two ways of climbing. You can increase the collective. Sometimes that's useful. Or change the pitch of the aircraft. Now in changing the pitch, you don't want to pitch more than 30 degrees up. But it's very simple. Get a good amount of speed, pitch the aircraft up, look at the VSI, climbing, 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 quite dramatically. When you get to the altitude that you want, simply nose down, change the pitch again, return to normal flight. That's how to rapidly climb. Now similarly, this is where people get very, very confused. You can dive a Black Shark. It's not hard to do, just requires a little bit of thought. So here we are, 161 kph, about 400 meters in height. What I'm going to do is dump the collective. So I'm closing the collective now. Nose down towards the ground, no more than 30 degrees again. So there we go, 30 degrees, a bit too much. Pulling it back. Look, I am dropping like a rock. So now I pull back on the cyclic gently. And as I pull back, I increase the collective. Many people would have died at that point. Now that warning sound you got was actually overspeed on the rotors. The rotors will increase speed as you do that, but as you see, if you are clear-headed about it, it is fairly easy to dive a Black Shark a few hundred meters very rapidly without plummeting into the ground. The key is to dump the collective, nose down no more than 30 degrees. As you get towards the bottom of that dive, start gently pulling back on the cyclic to bring the nose level, and pull back on the collective, raise the collective to start gaining some, give you some more power and start leveling off. Very, very simple to do. Practice those things. Now we'll get into the fun stuff. There are two maneuvers that are used quite a lot in combat, which invariably cause problems. The first is what's called a combat U-turn, or a combat turn. So what I'm going to do here is engage my flight director, so I'm no longer fighting the autopilot. I'm going to trim this, and we're going to get about 200, 250 kph on the speed. Bit more collective, so I'm not dropping. Now the idea of a combat U-turn is that you will gain some height, usually about 50 to 100 meters. You will lose a lot of speed to the point that you could even end up in a hover if you're not careful. You don't really want to lose too much speed. You want to kind of end this at about 80 kph, and you want to be facing the other way. Now the way you do it, it's all going to happen very fast. I'm going to pitch up to about 20 or 30 degrees. As I pitch up, I'm going to roll left about 30 degrees and feed in quite a lot of left rudder. I'm going to lose a lot of speed, I'm going to gain quite a bit of height, and I should end up facing the other way. So, here we go. So 250, my collective is... Oh, by the way, as you do this as well, you want to be increasing collective towards takeoff power. You really want to get that collective coming up at the same time that you're feeding in the pitch change, the bank change, and the yaw change. You're also feeding in collective. So here we go. Let's say this is a target that I really don't want to be passing by too much. I've just noticed it. 30 degrees up, bank, left rudder, collective up. And as we come out, I'm putting in a lot of right cyclic now, not a lot of right rudder now. Reduce my collective. You can see I've gained about 100 in my height, and I'm down to 100 kph on my speed, but I've reversed direction. That is a combat U-turn or a combat turn. Let me show you that once again. You need to be about 200, 250 to manage that effectively. Anything less than that, you do risk getting into a vortex ring. You also risk actually just stopping, which is probably not a good idea in a combat arena. So here we go. Increasing my collective so I level off a little bit. Collective usually is used to contain your normal transitional... that was the wrong way of saying it. Collective is normally used to control whether you're climbing or descending in level flight. Obviously you can change the pitch as well. Most typically in the Black Shark you'll use collective. There we go, so quite a lot of speed now. So 30 degrees up, increase my collective towards takeoff power, left bank, left rudder. Here we go. I've now got full collective on. I'm pushing right on the stick at this point to stop the aircraft going inverted. Right rudder pedals, and we're facing back the way we came. We gained about 100 meters, and we slowed down quite a lot as well. Combat U-turn. The next thing you're going to want to do, now a combat U-turn, you lose a lot of speed as you've seen. So the other maneuver that you might want to learn and practice over and over and over again is called a brake turn. A brake turn is typically used when you're being engaged, normally by guns on the ground, maybe by a SAM launch. And it's a very rapid 90 or more degree turn to one side without losing speed. It is very similar to a combat U-turn, except the pitch doesn't change. You will, however, put in a lot of G on the aircraft, and if you get it wrong, you risk getting in a vortex ring and crashing. Here's how it works. Going to bank to the left 30 degrees. I'm going to feed in almost full left rudder. And as I go and do this, I'm going to start losing altitude quite hard. So I'm going to put in a lot of back cyclic and a lot of collective to try to maintain my altitude. So, where are we? We're going to head back that way. This is a brake turn. So here we go, 30 degrees. Lots of back stick now. Up to 45 degrees. Right stick now to stop. Actually got that a little bit wrong, and we slowed down a little bit too much, so let me try that once again. Typically with a brake turn, you won't slow down too much. You'll lose some speed, but not a great deal. So let's get some more speed out of this. I wasn't really paying attention to my speed when I entered the maneuver, so that's probably why I screwed up a little bit there. Here we go. So nice speed there, 230, 240-ish. So round to the left, full left rudder, and then level out. There we go. You see, I didn't lose too much speed. I didn't really gain that much height. I did gain some. And I've changed direction, and I'm still over 200. Very good maneuver when avoiding a missile. The trick with that is not to go over 45 degrees of bank. So you need to be countering that. You do need a lot of back stick as well. You do need a lot of collective. And you do need a coordinated input of right stick and right rudder to come out of the brake turn. You can see I lost almost 0 speed there, and actually lost some height, which is pretty cool. So once again, let's do this to the right this time. Right stick, right rudder, full collective, back on the stick. As I come out, left stick, left rudder. And there we go. You have to be fairly aggressive with the right stick and the right rudder, and the left stick and the left rudder to counter the turn at the end of the maneuver. Those are key. You'll feel like you don't really want to. You really do have to be quite aggressive. Here's a good reference point coming up, which is the runway to our right. Let's do a brake turn up the runway. So 30 degrees or more. Pulling back on the stick. Lots of right rudder. Left stick, left rudder. Not so much left rudder. There we go. And once again. Lots of collective as well. You don't want to lose too much height. Pretty neat stuff. Okay, let me see if I can put this into a vortex ring condition. I need quite a lot of height to do this. A vortex ring condition occurs basically when you stall the rotor blades. And you're descending quite fast, and the easiest layman's way of putting it is that air is moving up through the blades so fast that you simply can't recover. You can't get the blades to bite the air and give you lift, so you end up just plummeting into the ground. It's typically something that happens when people try to go into a hover. They will pitch up too much. As you pitch up, your speed will drop. You will eventually start descending. If you don't catch it quick enough, the rate of descent will increase to a point where you simply cannot recover and you have a vortex ring. Gonna need quite a lot of height to do this. Okay, first, whoops, let's fix my trimming here. First, I'm going to get moving, about 100 or so, and I'm going to show you how to basically go into a hover. So going forward now, 85 kph, coming up 90, 95 kph, there we go, 100. Okay, this is how you go into a hover. Pitch up no more than 30 degrees. Reduce collective. Should have done that before. Now notice my vertical speed is dropping. Increase collective to try to hold your altitude, and you're good to go. There we go, we're actually going backwards at that point. Simple enough. The key is not to go more than 30 degrees, and keep an eye on your vertical speed. So once again, that is your vertical speed. Keep an eye on that. Ideally, as you go into the hover, you actually won't gain any altitude, or very little. I'll show you how that works. Now I know I'm gaining altitude quite a lot here. I am actually trying to get up to a height where I can show you what a vortex ring looks like. And hopefully not die. Okay, so here we go. I don't want to really gain too much altitude. You are going to gain some if you need to do this in a hurry, but you don't gain too much. So what I'm doing, dropping my collective. There goes my vertical speed down. Pitch up, 30 degrees. My vertical speed is coming back up, so even less collective now. Here comes my speed. Now my vertical speed is dropping, so I'm increasing collective. And we're approaching a hover state. Simple as that. The key is to watch your pitch no more than 30 degrees up and watch your vertical speed and use collective to compensate that. Now let me show you the vortex ring then. So I'm going to get some speed. This is how people kill themselves. It's very easily done. Now I'm not going to be able to talk you through the recovery when it's actually happening, so I will talk you through it right now. What's going to happen is once we get in the vortex ring, I actually lose control. So you kill the collective, completely zero out the collective. Pitch forward on the cyclic until the aircraft starts responding and it goes nose down. At that point you can start pulling back on the cyclic and on the collective to try to pull out of the vortex ring. So this is what typically happens. People are cruising along quite happily. They pitch up about 45 degrees. They drop the collective because they don't want to gain too much height. Watch the vertical speed. There it goes. Plummet, 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 plummet. And right about now, we're in a vortex ring. I am descending way too fast. There's nothing I can do to counter this. Look, we're starting to spin. So collective off. Cyclic forward. Like so. Once it stabilizes, pull back on the stick, gently increase the collective, and pull out of the dive. Now you know why you practice dives at the beginning of the video. Obviously, you can't do that. Look how much height I lost. You can't do that close to the ground. So the trick is to practice entering and leaving a hover such that you don't end up in a vortex ring. Hope this was useful to some of you guys learning how to fly the Black Shark. Practice, practice, practice is the key. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think, and by all means click on like if you enjoyed this video. Once again, my name is Froogle, and I shall see you guys soon. Thanks guys.